Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse, and in today's video we are doing some trash to treasure thrift flips. For my first project, I'm going to be giving this little cabinet a makeover, and while this technically isn't trash, of course, it is very tired, so we want to give it an update and a refresh. So to begin with, I am going to be removing the door from the cabinet. I'm going to take the little hooks out from the inside, and I'm also going to remove the handle from the door and the hinges from the door as well. After cleaning, to prepare my surface, I'm going to be using Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer in grey. I'm going to be applying this primer over the entire piece. This is going to block any stains. It's also going to block the design that's on the back section of the cabinet there from peeking through my paint. But it's also going to prepare the surface for the paint because this is quite a shiny, smooth surface, and I want to make sure that my paint sticks and stays there. This had quite a factory finish feel to it. I let my 2 coats of primer dry overnight, and the next day I came in with a brown chalk paint. This is just some leftover Dixie Belle chocolate chalk paint that I'm just working my way through, and I'm applying it, brushing it on, but you'll notice that I also do go back and do a bit of a dabbing and stippling motion. This is going to help create texture. Ultimately, my vision for this piece is to create a vintage, almost shabby chic looking cabinet so that it looks like it's had many years of wear and use, and right now it just looks too new and perfect. So adding this is really going to help with the texture, but also I'm going to be using milk paint a little bit later, so I need to have something underneath that is going to be reminiscent of wood so that it will peek up underneath all the chipping and cracking I'm hoping that I can achieve. When you're trying to create a vintage look out of something that's new, you definitely want to think about the layers underneath your paint as well. I only did the 1 coat of the chocolate paint and then I let it dry. Next, I'm going to use Fusion's Toasted Coconut Milk Paint. I'm going to measure out a cap full of the mixture into a plastic cup. And then once I'm happy with the amount of powder, I am then going to be mixing an equal amount of water in there as well. I'm stirring it well with a little whisk. If you want it to be even smoother, I suggest that you use an immersion blender. I'm then going to be using a natural bristle brush to apply my milk paint. If you haven't used milk paint before, it has a much thinner consistency than, say, your mineral or your chalk paints, but it is amazing the old world finish that using this can achieve. There really is no other paint like it. So I'm going to be doing 2 coats of toasted coconut over the entire cabinet. Once I get to the 2nd coat of milk paint, I did grab my hairdryer and I sped up the drying process. This is going to help create a crackle, chippy finish. Now, milk paint can be pretty unpredictable. Sometimes it does crackle, sometimes it doesn't. I was able to achieve quite a lot of cracks in this one, which I was really happy about because we are going for a vintage look. Next, I'm going to be using IOD's Rose Chintz Paint Inlay. I am measuring out how much I'm going to need because I'm just going to be applying it to the interior back section of the cabinet. This particular part of my project was inspired by Jamie Ray Vintage. I saw her using a paint inlay in milk paint and I thought I have to give it a go. I've been asked a lot of times by viewers if this is possible, so we are doing it today. I'm going to lay down another coat, so this is the 3rd coat that's going down, and I'm being quite generous, making sure that I have a lot of that milk paint down. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to take that paint inlay and I am going to be positioning that in my paint. I'm pressing the inlay down into the wet milk paint. Now this has little ridges where those hooks were, so you can see I'm pressing the inlay in and around that because I want the design to continue and be unbroken. And I'm just working my way down until I have the whole paint inlay pressed in. Now you can see I've done that design side down. That grid should be staring up at you. I'm then going to take my mister and I'm going to mist over the top of the inlay. This is going to help the inlay paint pigments to react, and as it dries, it is going to dry into my paint, if that makes sense. I'm just using a wet wipe now to go around and apply a bit more pressure to make sure that the inlay is completely down, that I haven't missed any areas. I let it dry completely, and now I'm coming in with my mister again. Now, I didn't use nearly as much water as I usually do because milk paint can be reactivated with water, but I did it enough so that the paper would release. And as you can see here, as I'm pulling it up, we got a lovely paint inlay impression there that you can see. But what I love about this is that it is pulling some of that other paint up. We are getting a wonderfully chippy finish. This looks so authentically old. I'm loving this look. I'm going to set the inlay to one side to dry because I will get another 1 to 2 uses out of it. I then came in with a hairdryer and I dried the paint off a little bit more. This is going to help achieve some more cracks in some of the paint that is still wet. I even got a couple of little cracks in the paint inlay designs themselves, but be careful here so that it doesn't all chip off. I'm then going to be using IOD's Antiquities stamp. This is one of the designs from that pack. I'm going to ink up this stamp design, but I'm then going to use a wet wipe to wipe back some of the areas because I only want part of the text. Once I've wiped off the excess ink from the areas I don't want, I'm going to position it on the top section of my cabinet door and press down. I've always got one hand holding that stamp in place while the other moves and applies pressure. And when I'm happy with that, I will lift that stamp design straight up. I'm then going to ink up the same stamp again, but I just want that small lettering that's actually a French address, I believe. And again, I'm going to wipe off the excess ink from the areas that I don't want, and I'm going to position this one down the bottom of the cabinet door. Next, I want to do a little bit of wet distressing, so I'm using a wet wipe and I'm going around and pulling back some of that milk paint. Now remember, we have the chocolate chalk paint underneath and that is not really able to be reactivated with water, so we are going to just see that peeking through and it's going to be a really fun distressed look. I ended up sealing the paint inlay section with Rust-Oleum's Clear Matte Spray Sealer, but I am going to seal the rest of my project using some clear water-based wax, and then I will buff back the excess with a microfiber cloth. This really is the best way to seal your milk paint. I only use the spray sealer on the center inlay design because it can be reactivated with water-based products. Once I had buffed back the excess wax, I then put my cabinet back together. And here's our finished chippy floral cabinet. I'm really pleased with how this turned out, and I'm so glad that I decided to have a go at using the paint inlay with milk paint. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. This next project really is a bit of a trash to treasure project. I found this toolbox for a few dollars at the thrift store. I'm applying some White Night spray paint in Mocha. I decided to do this because it did have some stains and things on there that I thought would be best covered up with the spray paint as opposed to a different primer. Here's how it's looking at the moment. I also did the inside as well. I'm then going to use Paint Couture's Duck Egg chalk paint over the entire piece. I end up doing 2 coats of this beautiful blue. If I inspire you to try any of the Paint Couture products used in today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. I will put it in the description and on the screen. I just get a little thank you from Paint Couture in return. When you're painting a toolbox, you definitely need to think about all of the different sections that are involved with a piece like this. For example, when you're doing the sides, you need to make sure that you open it up and get underneath the sections where it would be hidden by the lid. You definitely need to do the back. Ultimately, you're painting the entire outside. I didn't paint the inside of mine because I thought it looked really tidy with the spray paint without that. I'm also painting over the top of the handle and the hardware so that it's all sort of a cohesive look, and I am also going to be layering some other colors over the top as well. So here you can see I've opened the lid and I'm just going along and making sure I've got all those areas that I might have missed because the lid was closed. When my 2 coats of duck egg chalk paint are completely dry, I took out IOD's Ephemeral Melange Transfer, and I'm going to be using this beautiful rose design here. I think the colors go beautifully with that duck egg blue. So I'm just removing the transfer, and here I'm just going to be lining it up to work out how much of the design is going to be on the top there. I'm going to have some of it coming over the edge as well, but I am going to trim off the text that's down the bottom, and just below the rose we will be repositioning those into a different section. I'm then going to be peeling off the backing part of the transfer and then positioning that transfer design on top of my toolbox. The grid lines really are a great help here so that you can try and get it straight. When I'm happy with that, I'm going to press down and then use the transfer tool that comes in the pack to just go over the top of the entire design to start off with, especially down in the bottom right hand corner where you can see there is a dint in the toolbox. I don't mind the dint, I think that adds to the vintage charm of it, but I do need to make sure that I'm working that transfer in. I'm then picking a corner and you can see I'm lifting that plastic as I'm rubbing to see if the design has transferred. If it hasn't, I just put it back down and continue. This can be a little bit time consuming when there's lots of thin letters, so just definitely take your time, and I'm just going to continue rubbing until I have the entire transfer down. When it comes time to go over the edges, I do flip the toolbox up a little bit, and I'm also making some little cuts so that I can pull that transfer over the lip and have the design sort of flowing down the side. Once I have the transfer down, I'm going to use part of that carrier sheet to rub and burnish it further. I'm then going to be using some of the text that we cut off on the bottom section of the toolbox. You can see I haven't quite finished doing the handle. We're going to be using a different color there. So I'm just repeating the same steps as we did up above, just rubbing until I have that text transferred. I also took that smaller piece of text and applied that just to the left of the roses. For the handle and the lock mechanism there, I'm using Paint Couture's Farmhouse Linen Chalk Paint. I ended up doing 3 coats. I don't need this to be perfect. I'm happy for some of that blue to show through and even some of that mocha spray paint. That's fine. We're going for a vintage rustic look here. So I'm just going to be painting over the handle and also, as I said, the little locking mechanism as well. I went with white here because obviously the floral transfer is already the main focal point. It's absolutely gorgeous. I don't want to take away from it, but if you wanted, you could come in with a metallic at this stage and give it a bit of a pop of shine if that was something that might go with your decor. When the paint was dry, I used Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in Satin and I applied 2 coats over the entire outside of the toolbox to seal everything in. And here's a look at our finished project. This was definitely a trash to treasure makeover, and it is amazing what Paint Couture paint and IOD transfers can do. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. For my next project, I'm going to be giving this jar a makeover. Someone had already put down some gold foil type material, I think. So I'm going to be priming my surface first with Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer in grey. I couldn't get any of that foil design off, so I decided I would cover it up with this primer. It's going to prepare my surface for paint, and it's also going to block any of that gold showing through. Right now, it just does not suit the decor that I like. I want to go for something a little bit more primitive looking. I like the overall shape, and I think that just adding a couple of coats of paint is really going to transform this. I'm going to use Paint Couture's Cozy Beige once my 2 coats of primer are dry, and I'm just applying it in a dabbing and stippling motion. I applied my primer with a makeup sponge. That's definitely my go-to for a lot of smooth surfaces. But when it comes to adding the paint, I like the extra texture that using a paintbrush can achieve. So I'm going to work my way around my little jar, pot, whatever you want to call it, until I have the entire piece covered. And I ended up doing 2 coats of the Cozy Beige. I didn't paint all the way inside of our jar here just in case someone wanted to use it for flowers, but you can see I am going a little bit on the inside so that it looks good if it doesn't have flowers in. I'm then going to be using Roycycled's Labels Masterboard. You can see I've already used quite a few of the designs. I'm thinking that this round label will look lovely on the jar, so I'm going to cut that out, and then I'm going to cut even closer to the label so that we get some of that background image off. I definitely want this to look like a vintage jar that has sat on a shelf for many years, and this label is perfect for that. I'm then going to be using Paint Couture's Decoupage Medium in Matte. I'm going to apply a generous layer in approximately the same size area as the label that we cut out, and once I'm happy with the amount of product there, I'm going to take the decoupage label and just lay it on top. I'm then going to smooth that out with my fingers to start off with. If I was working with a larger piece of decoupage paper, I would work in sections and just attach one side at a time. But because this is a small piece of decoupage paper, I'm pretty confident in just laying it down. You can see I'm now coming in with some more of that decoupage medium over the top to seal it all in. I let that dry and then came in with Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in Satin. I'm going over the top of the decoupage medium, but really this is to seal the rest of the jar. And here's a look at our vintage style jar. This was a quick and easy flip, but I think it was very effective. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I really hope that you've enjoyed today's video. Let me know in the comments if you had a favorite project from today. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find most of the products used today on our website, theprovincialfarmhouse.com.au. Thanks for watching.